Is that it? 4? Okay. All right, who's going to be next?
My name is David Hirsch. I live about a mile north of the Trinitas project on Hospital Road. And I want to make a few remarks on the things that I've heard this morning. It bothers me that people can say things about this project without ever visiting the project. They can look at the rules and they can say what CEQA says and all the rules that go along with building projects. And I'm sure if CEQA and the Keep It Real group walked into any business in Valley Springs, we wouldn't have any businesses at all because they would find fault with anything. And that's why our government has taken over. It's become a business. That's why California is broke, because of people like this keeping things from developing. And again, I'm opposed.
The discussion is to the.
Okay, I'm opposed to the gentleman talked about tax issue, the attorney for the Keep It Real. I don't know if he's ever visited Trinitas, but there's one home on the project. It's well worth $2 million. And if this thing ever gets passed, I'm going to build 2 more homes in that project with $2 million each. So it will be a substantial tax basis that Trinitas is generating. Traffic problem. I don't know if any of you have driven past La Quintana recently. It's a 2-lane road. And I have a problem turning into that place myself. And it's very busy, but I don't think the county's ever done anything about it, except that it's still a busy project. And with visit Vista del Lago there, just prior to the turn-in, it's a hazardous situation. It's much more hazardous than Trinitas will ever become. As far as cannibalizing of golf courses in our area, this course, as one of my prior speakers spoke about, the business model of this golf course is unlike a La Quintana or a Greenland Creek or Manteca or Swenson or Van Buskert. If he cannibalizes anybody, he's going to cannibalize himself. And it's not going to impact the other golf courses at all. Because golfers who go to La Quintana won't pay the kind of money because of the beauty of Trinitas. I've golfed for a long time, and I know a bunch of individuals, a number of individuals from La Quintana who can't afford it. So they wouldn't cannibalize La Quintana by going to Trinitas. And that water issue. I'm a farmer east of Trinitas. I have 300 acres. I'm one of the smaller farmers just west of Trinitas. Anybody to blame about taking the water is me. I suck up that water. I use 30 million gallons of water every week on my grape ranch. And if you tell Mr. Nemi he can't have his golf course, I'm going to go up there and turn it into a grape vineyard, and I'll be using 10 times the amount of water he uses right now on his golf course. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Berkowitz. I live in Arnold. I just want to address a basic point here. The Planning Commission, his job, as I understand it, is to recommend to the Board of Supervisors whether to approve the project, approve it in a different way, or disapprove the project. A lot of their decision, your decision, is based on the EIR. Now, I know it's not a legally binding document, but it provides a lot of information to you. So if that document is flawed in any way, you don't have any way to make an accurate assessment of the project. The project is described as a golf resort. A golf resort consists of 3 things, or this project. 1 is a golf course. 2 is golf support facilities. And 3, there's residences, be it motel, houses, whatever. Now, in the EIR, the Board of Supervisors said, We want it revised, the original one, we want it revised to a pre-existing pre-golf course state. And in the EIR itself, it states that it's coming from the pre-golf course state. And yet, there's nothing in the project description that says we're going to build a golf course. Well, that's the basic project. The golf course is at the heart of this project. There's nothing in the EIR that says we're going to build a golf course. The EIR stated in paragraph 1.1 that it was based on pre-golf course environmental conditions. But the actual EIR in paragraph 2.5.1.1 still refers to the golf course as a pre-existing condition. I don't quite understand that. I don't know how you can be expected to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors based on that document. And so therefore, I don't think that document, you should recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they certify that document, because that document is obviously flawed right from the beginning, regardless of water, roads, noise, any other thing. The document is flawed, and that's what you're basing your opinion on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Not right now.
I'm Becky Shriver from Bell Springs, and I'm just talking from the heart here and something that I've listened to today. One is where I used to live, I used to golf frequently at a golf course that had cows directly adjacent with them. The cows watched us hit the ball, the cows watched us hit them into them. That farmer never had a problem with his cows. They psychologically were just absolutely fine. And I believe that they probably produced, because every year that I went out there, there were more cows for us to hit. The other issue I think we've forgotten today is our future here in Calaveras County looks pretty dim right now if we don't bring some more revenue into our county. We need jobs. We have unemployment at its highest. Our country is not going to provide us, because we are Americans that want to have our own entrepreneurs. We are a capitalist country. We want to survive on our own. And this is an opportunity for us to provide jobs for people. That golf course out there is to me, a bird and wildlife sanctuary. If you've ever been out there, there are birds in this county now that weren't there before. It's a beautiful place to bring your families to come and enjoy the day. And I am sure that they are going to have packages someday. That's going to include all those other golf courses that we seem to be feeding off of. They're going to be developing something that's going to bring revenue to them. Our wineries are going to have people come and see them. This is not the kind of golf course that's going to have a one-day golfers. They're going to plan a week around coming to Calaveras County. All of this, I see in the future, is going to bring us more jobs. And that's what I'm looking for here. I say yes to this.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is John Buckley. I also have hit golf balls near cows, but I'm feeling that they were disturbed when I did, so I'm not sure that they were that content. In your testimony so far today, folks have said that the school district would like dollars, CCWD would like dollars, but for the purpose of this hearing, those are not the issues. It's the adequacy of the EIR and whether or not this project is in compliance with your own planning regulations. In a rebuttal last time, Ms. Kinderman dismissed claims that the project is inconsistent by arguing that the project is consistent with 18 general plan policies. And if you look carefully, there are many policies that it's not violating. But if a bank robber goes by a lot of banks and doesn't rob them, and then he robs one bank, he's a bank robber. If this project has policies that it's not in conflict, but there are policies that it is in conflict, it's in violation. And that's the case. And the key to that is something that no one can argue about. This project is designated on property that has a general plan land use designation of natural resource land ag preserve. There is no arguing that, and that the intended uses are defined as wildlife, botanical, ag preserve, timberlands, dam inundation, or mineral resource 2A and 2B. So the premise by the applicants that this is agriculture is one that you have to look at in terms of honesty in government. Because if you look at the general plan that says preserve and encourage the use of land for ag purposes, or protect legally established agriculture from encroachment by incompatible land uses, and then you look at what you're actually being asked to approve with this project, it doesn't really matter that the applicant does grow and has, and I've seen, and they look good on the site, the olive trees, but a commercial golf course, the lodging with retail space, residential development, a tremendous amount of commercial events, the restaurant bar, all of those things are not agriculture. Those are not agriculture. And a parcel that the general plan designates for natural resource use should not be approved on those grounds. A second key point made in Ms. Kinderman's rebuttal was to dismiss the claim that the general plan is legally deficient by saying that was just the county's consultant's opinion. But the county's own community development director, Stephanie Moreno, stood in front of the Board of Supervisors, and in getting the money for the general plan process, said very clearly the general plan has legal internal inconsistencies and needs to be revised and updated to be consistent with state law. That's not CSER, that's not somebody's attorney, that's your own staff. Furthermore, our legal counsel with Shute, Mahady and Weinberger submitted to the county, I'm going to give you another copy of it for the chair, that a very detailed letter in November 20th, 2007, spelling out again the deficiencies and that the county is legally barred from relying on that general plan for new development projects that have a specific nexus to those deficiencies. And this project has many of them, as Mr. Enfacino put forward. So other projects can be approved, but ones that have a nexus cannot be. Another issue is that Ms. Kinderson assured this commission that CEQA allows the county to summarize comments. So the complaints from people like us that our comments weren't addressed, they can summarize them. She is absolutely right. Anyone can summarize comments in terms of the county. There's no dispute about that. But what the county cannot do to be in compliance is to completely ignore in an EIR substantive comments or to fail to respond for clear requests for pertinent information. And whether it's our asking for a list of feasible greenhouse gas emission mitigation measures that could be appropriate for this project, or whether it's asking for the compromise alternative for personal use to still be allowed that our center put forward as something to be considered, those are not considered in the EIR. There is not the information, and there's not even information saying, well, we didn't really think they were justified because of this or because of this. The last thing that I would touch on in terms of the deficiency is that the gist of Ms. Kinderman's rebuttal and much of what you heard today was that the commission should approve this project based on social economic. And the closing part that I would share is that the commission is required to ensure that planning laws and general plans don't play favorites, that there can't be one set of rules for someone who can afford a large amount of expenditure and another set of rules for average citizens with limited financial resources. Thank you. And any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Are there any questions? All right. Scout? Thank you. All right.
My name is Frances Sands, excuse me, and I live in the general area of the Trinitas project.
Could you pull the mic a little closer to you? Thank you.
I'm tall too, I should be able to. There we go.
That's good. That's
Okay.
good.
And I live just several miles from the project. And, thank you. And our friends and neighbors who live in Valley Springs, I might want to remind them that they do not share the same wells that we do in the general area of this project. They don't have the same concern as we do because their water is not as much in jeopardy as ours is. And there was one man that spoke about his ranch land or agricultural land uses more water than Trinitas. Well, Calaveras County, you would expect that. This is an agricultural county. People come out here for beautiful drives because of the gorgeous, wonderful rural nature of the area. That's in Calaveras County. If you would ask anybody to describe it that does not live here, they would say ranch land, agricultural land, like that's what you would expect. And I would like to know, once water starts being rationed, which it looks like California's on the road to, how much water is Trinitas going to have to give up? How about the $2 million homes? Are they going to be rationed? Consider these things. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine Jackson, Wallace citizen. I won't reiterate a lot of points already made, but while we recognize that the golf course itself is beautiful, the situation that residents, neighbors, and this commission find themselves in is tragic to me. It is said that the only reason the government has authority over land use decisions lies in its police power to uphold the federal, state, and county codes and regulations. From 2001 throughout today, the public record is replete with minimal and failed attempts at enforcement and corrective actions that have not been met even until today. Rather than make this about a young, beautiful family's efforts to save the county from economic peril while offering recreation, isn't it really about failed procedures and planning standards which, in the absence of leadership, have left this community in an ugly cleavage of neighbor against neighbor for so long? By what logic was an EIR even brought forward by the Board of Supervisors after the completion of an 18-hole golf course? Yes, it is easier to give forgiveness than permission. You laid on planning an impossible job of preparing an EIR as if the golf course was not there. There's substantial proof that the EIR cannot stand, and even the 10 project sites' significant impacts have now led to a statement of overriding consideration. Consideration for whom? Your recommendations and alternatives have broken the whole into pieces that can satisfy no one and may put the economic part of it in jeopardy. Your decision today, by your own admission, carries an area-wide impact of inducing growth for miles around in the heart of agricultural land. How will the county's land use designations have any meaning left after this precedent setting? What is natural resource land and ag land? There will be no meaning left for landowners and developers in the Wallace community. This commission should have the courage to not compound problems created by past staff who either ignored the rules or condoned violating the rules and allowed this illegal project to get this far. Thank you.
Thank you. A copy for staff as well. Catherine? Thank you.
My name is Harry Graham. I am proprietor of Mountain Ranch Natural Products. About a year ago, I was running low on olive oil, and I got Mike's name from the manager at Sender's Market. I needed some olive oil, so I called Mike, and he said, "You like soap?" I said, "Oh yeah, soap and lotions, things like that." He said, "Well, I could use somebody to make some soap using my oils." And so since then, I've been making oil for him, making soap for him, soap and lotion and body butter. They're distributed throughout Calaveras County, and I'll have to say one thing: he certainly improved my bottom line. And I'm looking forward to it in the future as well. That's basically what I need to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has not testified who would like to at this point? Because this will be the last opportunity before we close the public hearing. Sir, are you going to testify?
Yes, good. Okay, my name is David Gould. The reason why I'm here to speak today, number one, I've sat and listened to nothing but a lot of nitpicking today. People talking about, their water things. For 4 decades, like we spoke today, we've had problems with our water table anyway. Unfortunately, I think that's probably something she should address, take that up with God, because the people that are here today have nothing to do with the water. What I'm really here to talk about is, with today's economy, with what we got going on, all I've heard is everyone talking about what's their interest. I mean, like this lady, it was about her family or someone else. With Mike Nemi here in the Trinitas project, it's not about himself. I mean, kind of like a pastor that spoke, it's not about you. And Mike Nemi has really addressed that. He's putting something out here for the economy. I mean, he's in my opinion, with today's economy, what he's doing is very heroic. I mean, he's offering jobs, he's offering tax dollars, things for this community. I haven't seen anyone today come up here and say, this is what we're going to project to the community, this is how we're going to bring more water to the community. Nobody here has addressed any of that, and that's really what I'm here to talk about. I mean, Mike Nemi and Trinitas, they're actually one of the largest product producers in this area. I mean, he's one of the largest taxpayers today. I mean, let's add all this rest of this project, and with what we have in the economy, I mean, keyword offering jobs. I mean, I look around, I haven't seen anyone offer new jobs in a while. I mean, I'm watching each day go by. Analysts say in the next 180 days, the economy's going to get worse. So, I mean, I think at this time, I mean, my vote for this project is yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? As I say, once I close the public hearing, there won't be another opportunity until the board hears this minute.
Morning. My name is Jeff Allen. I'm a contractor in the Valley Springs area. I met you last time we spoke. In my opinion, it is every bit about the economy here today. All the projects that you have on the books, I read in the paper that Mr. Harrington spoke to you and told you you have 200 projects on the books, that nothing's being done about them. I'm just a contractor. I'm not an ecologist. I'm not a biologist. I don't know anything about that stuff. I'm just the guy that has the tractor that moves the dirt. My living depends on me being able to put in septic systems or grading or do whatever to do. My other contractor friends are the same way. Again, the paper says that the unemployment rate in this county is 13.4% now. How long do you think we can sustain this? Where's your tax base coming from? I don't understand how a handful of people can hold this whole county at bay. For 4 years, I've been waiting for this general plan stuff, whatever that's all about, to get done. My livelihood is in you people's hands, but it's not about Jeff Allen and his backhoe business. It's about everybody that owns a business in this county. The restaurants. I've got friends in Valley Springs that owns restaurants, whether it be Cockeye Cafe, Hog Dogs, or whatever. The owners are working 2 shifts because they can't afford employees because nobody's taking anybody to the restaurants. You can't take your family to it. The people that I had employed up till a couple of years ago, they're working 2 and 3 counties away. Again, they're part of the mass exodus that leaves Highway 26 every morning, 3:30 to 5 o'clock, come home at 7 and 8 o'clock at night, don't get to see their kids play ball. It's got to stop. We can no longer let a handful of people hold our livelihood at bay. Some of them only been here a couple of years. I put their septic systems in. It was okay to build their home and let them move in here, but now we're going to shut the doors? Let's put a gate across the highway, don't let anybody else in? We can't do that. Our economy depends on it. Ma'am, forgive me, I don't mean any disrespect, but I don't know how to approach a board, so do I call you Madam Chairperson? I'm sorry. I told you last time I spoke that we have 2 sources of income in this county, especially the western end of the county. We have construction and we have welfare. I can't pay the welfare anymore. Maybe somebody else in here can, but I can't go on. You also said at the end of it that we also have tourism. Yes, we do. I did not throw that in. I forgot all about it. My wife and I love to go up to Couch Winery. Is that not the most beautiful thing we have in this county? Those buildings didn't fall out of the sky. A contractor built those. The landscaping out there. My wife spends hours just walking through the landscaping out there. That babbling brook, where you put little rocks across there to make it sound like a babbling brook for the weddings coming through there. The reflection pond where the bride stands on the other side of the pond. You can see a reflection in the pond. Mr. Counts had a vision. That didn't just fall out of the sky. His family wanted to do that. The Nemes want to do the same thing. Why can't we in the western end of the county have our counts? It's going to bring the economy back to our end of the county. If you're not letting us get any permits, thousands of dollars of each permit for those houses does go to our schools. We can hire people from out of the area that can come up here and give speeches and have a big title on their name. What they talk about in our county does not impact their income at all. It's devastating to the rest of us. Anything over a 2-syllable word, I guess we're going to stop the project. I'm sorry for that oversized salamander or oversized nightcrawler that grew legs. He could have evolved, according to Darwin, into this gorgeous hunk of man here standing in front of you. He hasn't made it yet. Are we going to tell Couch to take out those ponds, that babbling brook, all those rocks he put in that? Because that's Murphy's Creek, isn't it, that runs through there? How could he do that? How could he have a vision for that? So we're going to make Mr. Nemi pull those rocks out and those ponds out that are actually helping with the helicopters that come in for fighting fires, like the year before last when we had that fire between Hospital and...
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
That's it?
Sorry.
Okay.
Trying to be fair.
One more thing. I just can't get this visual out of my head about a bunch of lawyers sitting around talking about ethics and government.
All right. That will be the last speaker then. We will close the public hearing and ask, pardon me? Oh.
Mike Nemi. I'm speaking as an individual, and it's actually, it's a little surreal experience to stand up here. I've been kind of waiting 5 years to get here. So I want to thank the commission for enduring this whole process and the staff as well. I wanted to speak just to clarify a couple points. One being the use of the property, and I know it's relevant to the overall discussion. And since 2001, when we bought the property, we've not taken it out of agricultural production. And in accordance with the guidelines for agricultural tourism, we've been providing activities such as bird watching, hunting, wildlife tours, orchard tours, all of these things. As the land use from back then has evolved, as being a part of the agricultural community, I'm also part of Calaveras Grown and the Ag Coalition. We were driving land uses through in 2006, passing ordinances on the agritourism side. The state of California, UC Extension and land use and nature tourism recognizes golfing on a working farm as agritourism. And I think that's important. That's an important note, because I keep hearing all of this resounding sound of golf is not tourism, or golf is not agriculture, this, that, and the other. The actual land use is recognized by the state. 78% of all of the ag districts in the entire state of California allow golf courses in the ag zone. I think that was one important point I wanted to make. The second one, I came here today expecting a CEQA discussion, and I know the economic impact report is part of that document. A few things I wanted to clarify. I respect the gentleman who has expertise in this area. Unfortunately, they didn't have the chance to sit down and discuss the business plan, and there are some specific points. The $125 green fee is an all-inclusive green fee. In coming up with a business model for an agritourism destination, when you have the Gulf, we've integrated all of our ag products and the whole experience into all the things that are great about Calaveras County into our entire experience. That's a one-stop shop fee, but that includes a green fee of around $70, which is actually less than Greenhorn Creek and less than Saddle Creek. But it also includes taxable items such as the olive oil products, the sleeve of balls, lunch, and a round of drinks. So those are clarifications I wanted to make on that. Also, people say, who's going to come to Calaveras County to play golf? Perhaps I should have brought in evidence, a stack of emails, about 200 a week. We get people from out of our county wanting to come to Calaveras County and play this golf course. We've recently been recognized, we're the number 12 best new golf course, best new private in the country by Golf Digest. We just landed on the Golf Week magazine top 50 list. We're number 40 in America. This golf course isn't even open, controversial or not. People want to come play this golf course. We want to offer them the experience, the same thing Couts is offering people, except he's missing the lodging component. However, the town of Murphy's has benefited from that. People come to Murphy's as a destination. They go and do the wine tours. This is a perfect complement to our overall component of selling Calaveras County. We have nothing in the West End to get people there. We have 10 rooms at Lock and Tenant. We're proposing to triple that number, 30 rooms on site. I think that's an important component. People want to come, stay in Calaveras County. This is not a one-shot deal. It's to stay for a couple days with the opportunity to cross-fertilize with the Greenhorn Creek and a number of these other folks to bring people further into the county, spend money in this county. We are the gateway to tourism in Calaveras County. That's what this project is about. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk on those points. If any of the commissioners have any specific questions on the economic impact report, how those numbers drive or are driven, please, feel free to ask. I'll be happy to comment on that.
Thank you. All right, we will now close the public hearing, bring it back to staff for some comments, and then have discussion among the commission members.
Do you want to allow the applicant to respond to anything? It's your call.
The applicant had an opportunity to respond at the last hearing, and generally we only allow that one opportunity.
Okay.
So it's up to the commissioners if you want to change policy.
I don't know that it's changed. If he started off, doesn't he have a chance to answer the questions that were brought up?
This is a continued public hearing, and the applicant responded at the end of that was my take, but I'm open to any suggestions. Any comments?
I just have a couple of little things that.
No, I'm talking about this specific issue of whether the applicant now has another opportunity to address the issues that came up today.
I would be all right with that.
Is that agreed?
Yeah, I think if they want to answer any of the questions that came up today, you should have the opportunity.
I agree.
5 minutes, you know?
And that would be the last,
That's it.
It's a complex project, and there's been a lot of comments, so.
all right, Mr. Abbott, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Bill Abbott, for the applicant. Actually, I'll make it less than that. First of all, thank you for your patience to hear lots of testimony on a variety of issues and considerations. As part of your deliberations, I'm just going to kind of step back from the specific points I addressed earlier. You are not a trier of fact like a judge or a jury, but your responsibility, I think, is to make sure that there's evidence to support your decisions. And there's, certainly it's an oversimplification to say that there's lots of conflicting evidence that's in the record here today as part of this proceeding. This document and application has gone on for a long time. But the bottom line is as you work through the various choices before you in terms of the proposed actions of EIR certification and the proposed rezone, ask yourself, what's the evidence to support this decision? And the law provides that depending upon the decision, you need different levels of evidence. And Ms. Elliott can certainly give you a much more scholarly dissertation on your duties as planning commissioners. But I say that because if you harken back to the points that I raised, we said, there's a void of evidence on some of these conditions. And so, for example, we heard from San Joaquin County. They said, we want a different road standard. Well, everybody wants a different road standard. I will tell you, every county, and I've worked in probably 100 different cities and counties on land use issues. I represent probably 5 counties at the current time in a number of cities. So I have some experience working your side of the table. We're actually working at the table over there, not at the decision maker. And of course, San Joaquin's going to come in and say, we'd like a road for free. Well, I mean, congratulations, we all want something for free. But the question is, as part of your deliberations, is what's the evidence to support imposing a condition to upgrade the road? And again, there's a void of evidence. So the point, to circle back, your responsibility isn't to be the final arbitrator of fact to say there's this amount of water or this type of road impacts. Really, what you need to do is say, is there do I have evidence to support a certain position, and then vote that decision forward. So again, we would move the staff recommendation as modified by the materials we gave you earlier. We think we've been very selective in the request for modification to the conditions of approval and the mitigation measures. You have a sample, your last attachment basically takes the no recommendations and makes yes. And if you concur in the NEMI's vision for this site and what it can mean for the county and the potential public benefits in terms of employment opportunities and construction opportunities in these economic times, then we think there's ample evidence to support the project as proposed. And as Mike pointed out earlier, we'd be happy to answer any technical questions you have on any of the issues associated with the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. All right, we'll now close the public hearing and bring it back to the staff for comments.
At this point, staff's recommendations have not changed. We appreciate everybody's input on the project. We would, however, like to respond briefly to the information that Mr. Abbott presented at the beginning of today's hearing regarding his proposed changes, and then at that time take any question from the Planning Commission. The first element of his presentation had to do with the water and the information that has been provided both in the EIR and also on other documents. And based on the information that we have, that was recommendation. The estimates of water were just that, estimates, based on general information that applies to golf courses in general. However, the conclusions that were reached had to do with the sufficiency of water to support the existing uses and potential future uses. We are required by law to make sure that we have at least a reasonable source of water for long-term use. We are not saying that water is not available. We are saying there is a lack of evidence to prove such water would be available over the long term. and that is why staff has only recommended a continuation of the existing level of water use. In this case, it was good of the applicant to provide their information regarding the last year of water use, but based on, again, the information we have received from various consultants, it will take approximately 5 years to accumulate the amount of information that's necessary to really confirm the availability of water. So at that point, we would not wish to alter our EIR in that direction at this time. Next has to do with the amendments they are recommending to county agreements, conditions of approval, and so forth. First had to do with the general conditions 1-1, which is the standard wording for our indemnification agreement. As Mr. Abbott mentioned, there's reference in the file that an indemnification agreement was to be provided. We do not have that in the file or any indication that we had received it, although we have received a copy of one that has been signed by Mr. Nemi, but not by County Council or by the Director at this time. We appreciate the willingness of the applicant to re-sign an indemnification agreement. However, General Condition 1-1 is a standard policy, standard condition in all of our conditions of approval. The wording may vary slightly depending on the project and its application, but it is standard, and we do not recommend that be removed from the conditions of approval. The expiration date on the permit is consistent with what we would normally place on it, but based on that 1-7, we have no objection at this point to the December 31st, 2010. That is consistent with our time frame, but we did hold off putting that date in there until after we found out what conditions of approval and what the final decisions on this project would be. The next comment had to do with the bracelet requirement. That was on condition 2-7 for the administrative use permit. Number B is in boy. That is, as mentioned by Mr. Hendricks, that has been used for projects that have large events in the past by the county, and is a good point to confirm the counts that occur at these large events, and the county would still prefer to keep that condition of approval in our listing for the administrative use permit. The next recommendation is for condition 3-5, that's on page 7 of your attachment. This has to do with food service. There is no specific reference in the Trinitas application to for-profit food vendors. However, once that is approved in the rec zone, it would be something that could occur as a permitted use in conjunction with the other activities. And this is a standard, it's a standard condition from the Environmental Health Department, which basically puts the applicant on notice that should you decide to do this kind of work, these are the conditions you would have to meet. We would recommend that it remain. Next would be condition 4-1 on page 8 of the attachment 5, recommending modification prior to the occupancy of either the clubhouse or the spa lodge. Again, this is a condition from Public Works. Staff at this time is not going to take a position on that. That would be something that would have to be discussed with and approved by Public Works in order for us to recommend that it be removed as a condition of approval. The next would be page 12, which is condition 5. We've heard several people give us testimony regarding the condition of approval for the San Joaquin County to improve Weimer Road, as I mentioned in my earlier presentation. Including this condition is consistent with our including conditions of approval for Calaveras County roads that are under the jurisdiction of Calaveras County. conditions of approval for roads that are under the jurisdiction of another county should also be considered as a valid request, especially based on the fact that that would be normally imposed on any projects of development that impact that road. As mentioned earlier, this is not a mitigation, therefore we are not required to have the nexus of identifying a significant impact. However, there is a nexus both in the traffic section and in various other documents that have been provided, and also in testimony that you have heard. There is a nexus that the project would have an impact. And in fact, a corollary to that is that that is considered the primary access route from those that are going to the project site from State Route 26, is crossing over that area of Weimer Road. So there is a nexus that this project would have an impact on the amount of traffic that would traverse that road, and therefore it's consistent to entertain the condition of approval from San Joaquin County Public Works. And finally, there is a section at the last page, page 13, section number 6, general, that's recommended that I believe County Council can respond to.
Janice Elliott, County Council's office. I would suggest you just direct the council to work together with respect to this language. I don't have any inherent opposition to it. However, I think sentence 1 could potentially conflict with portions of the subdivision map act that address extensions of time on tentative maps when there's existing litigation. And I do have some concerns over section 2, but I believe we could work that out between now and the next board meeting.
And finally, there is an attachment that has to do with the modification of the mitigation measures that Mr. Abbott provided. He is asking, number 1, that we remove 2 mitigation measures that have to do with Williamson Act and agricultural use. The first mitigation measure which they are comfortable with is to remove the encroaching golf tee to the adjacent property. The second is recording the easements for the putting into a grazing land conservation easement, and the third is to restrict the use of the well on the adjacent property. The easements have been justified in the EIR, request for easements, in that amount of property at a minimum was what was removed from actual agricultural use as grazing land as a result of the construction of the golf course. This is mitigation for the loss of that grazing land, and it does have a nexus, and considering the agricultural prominence here in Calaveras County, the removal of that amount of agricultural land within an area that is primarily agricultural is a nexus that, in the opinion of staff, is potentially significant, or in this case, a significant impact, and therefore does require mitigation. This is reasonable mitigation. It's a one-to-one mitigation, and we believe that it is reasonable, prudent, and feasible. Third, they restrict the use of the well on the adjacent property. The adjacent property is under a Williamson Act contract. Based on information we have received from the Department of Conservation and in discussions with their staff, the uses on a Williamson Act contract property must be ag-related. We have amended that mitigation measure, and I believe that Mr. Abbott received copies of this amendment. It was in the staff as an attachment to the staff report. And basically what it now allows is, it states that the use of the off-site well shall be restricted to agricultural use only, i.e. irrigation of the olive orchard, so long as the property where it is located is subject to a Williamson Act contract. This is simply bringing the use of that well, which is on the ag contract property, into a consistent use with that contract. So we would prefer, staff's recommendation is that that mitigation remain unchanged as well. And finally, the request by Mr. Abbott to conform measure 3.13-1B. The lead-in information under mitigation measures prior to the start of the mitigation, those 3.13 mitigation measures, is referencing specifically the payment into room fees and basin fees. This only applies to 3.13-1A, and staff will be glad to modify that language to clarify that issue. Other than that, we would recommend no changes to that mitigation. And I believe that concludes the things we were going to reach. We can, if you would like, respond to some of the issues that were brought up during the public comment period, but that would be your request. Do you have any questions?
If there's some issues that you think need clarification, I'd like you to go ahead and say if they're, significant.
Okay, very quickly, school mitigation fees, the developer fees, those are paid by the people that are building the homes. There was a comment made that they would be getting fees from golf courses. That's not correct. The fees from the golf courses or other projects do not pay into the school impact fees. Those are only for residential purposes. There was also a comment made regarding the RIM fee and the amount of money that would be paid by the clubhouse at the construction of a clubhouse for RIM or basin fees. I believe that the number was quoted as over $250,000. In actuality, if the clubhouse is built to the 18,000 square foot size that is estimated or proposed by the applicant, the RIM fee would be a little over $68,000, and the benefit basin fee would be would be close to $46,000. So it's somewhat less than the $250,000 that was mentioned in the presentation. There was also a notice and information that Hospital Road and Weimer Road were under state jurisdiction. The only state jurisdiction on those roads is enforcement through CHP. Hospital Road is a county road under county public works jurisdiction, and Weimer Road is a county road under San Joaquin County jurisdiction. We have corrected the reference to Weimer Road in the EIR and in other documents that Hospital Road does become Weimer Road once it moves into San Joaquin County. That has been corrected. And let's see. There was a comment from CSERC regarding again the global climate change. And one of the issues that were not discussed is that small is when we're talking about a small project, that is in relationship to the regional, statewide, and global scale, and that is the way that we are supposed to look. They mentioned that we had not mitigated for any potential impacts. However, if the lead agency determines that a project impact is less than significant, not only should we not mitigate, we are not allowed to mitigate because the nexus is therefore significant impact. That's why we have initiated the conditions of approval, which will allow the project to stay in the lower end of any kind of impacts. But we are restricted by state law and by CEQA that we cannot mitigate unless we have that significant impact nexus. There was a question regarding general plan validity. It was noted the general plan is expected to remain current for approximately 20 years after that time. It is considered, it may still be valid, but it is not necessarily current. As a result of an interior analysis, it was determined that the county would benefit from updating the plan to incorporate current issues and the direction of planning law. A lack of currency is not the same as concluding that a general plan is insufficient or legally invalid. As we noted earlier, there has been no court determination that our plan is invalid. And I believe that was all I had in my notes.
Caitlin, just one comment that the school impact fees are also collected on commercial structures as well as the residences.
That's right, that's my error.
All right, commissioners, begin. You have any questions of staff? Now to start.
Can I say maybe one thing I was going to
Sure.
Kind of crunch times now for you guys to go front and center. But one of the questions I've been asked is, or a couple of questions I've been asked in general, and as you look at four of you sitting there, one can play with the math, and there's certainly the mathematical possibility of a tie vote on any given aspect of this. If in fact that occurs, that is your action, and that would be carried on to the Planning Commission as a tie vote on whatever the particular item is. Would also indicate that if you end up with a 2-2 tie on any given point, you can consider an alternative motion which may unclog that 2-2 and make some type of 3-1, so you need to always kind of remember that. Number two, you have two basic types of decisions here. One is what to do with the environmental document, and then the second is what to do with the various aspects of the project. One of the questions I was asked by somebody somewhere along the line is, well, if the EIR says to us that it's adequate, but the project isn't adequate, do we deny the EIR? No, you can in fact approve an EIR as adequate and then turn around and take an action that might be considered adversarial to the actual project. So they don't necessarily go together, but you also have that option to declare any given document not current or not adequate, or you don't want to act on it. So you need to a little bit separate the action on the environmental document from the actual project. When you get to the project, there really are four components: the zoning, the subdivision, the use permit, and the administrative use permit. We've given you a recommendation that essentially denies part and approves others. You have an ability to essentially approve what the applicant originally requested, 100%, turn down what the applicant requested, 100%, or go somewhere in between. And our recommendation is in between, but you could further amend that if you so chose. So it's a little bit of a moving target, but you need to think that when you make the motions and you act on it.
Thank you, Brent. Should we have a discussion on the environmental document? Start there. Who would like to go first? So our purpose is to determine whether the environmental impact report is complete and that we can certify it as being adequate and complete.
My comment to start with would be, is it perfect? No. Have I ever seen one that is? No. Will I ever see one that is? Probably not. I mean, EIRs are never completely adequate and they do their job. And I'm not sure that their job is to make sure that every I is dotted and T is crossed. What it really is to do is to guide us as best it can in making a decision that's based on reality. And I think this one does that. There are things possibly that could be done better, but I don't think it's inadequate in itself.
I'll jump in. I really don't believe that the EIR is adequate for basically the same reasons I had said previously in the commission meeting we had a month ago, and that still relates to global warming and the assurance of an adequate water supply. You know, the staff report says that it appears that adequate groundwater exists, but there still remains a great deal of uncertainty. Monitoring usage is proposed as a mitigating measure, but I don't believe that is really going to provide the assurance, certainly in the short term, that adequate water exists. An alternative viable source of water has not been identified, by the county or the applicant, and so I feel very uncomfortable that this whole assurance of water, which we've talked even more so today, has been adequately addressed in this EIR. As far as global warming, the county says it's difficult to determine if an individual project would have a significant or measurable impact on global warming. I think that we probably have enough figures where we could do a quantitative analysis of that, even based upon the economic documents that have been presented on both sides. We've got an idea about figures at attendance and events, the number of events, the duration of events, number of rounds of golf, other scheduled activities, the number of employees that are going back and forth to work, to do a quantitative assessment of the impacts and the carbon footprint of this project. And I believe that's totally doable, and I think it's missing in this EIR and should be accounted for.
It had to be very difficult to compile this EIR. I can't, if I counted the number of times that from both proponents and opponents that the word complex was used, I could probably fill up my entire legal pad here. And it certainly, at the end of the last meeting, I was overwhelmed is probably the only way to describe, what I was hearing. The EIR is huge, and we're only supposed to consider the final EIR according to CEQA, if I'm reading that right, when we do this. And in the back seat of my truck, I've got a whole box full of EIRs that, I'm sure glad I didn't get the bill to have to pay for all of those. But so we're going into the one final book and plus little discs that we're looking at. And it's huge, and I do agree with Ted, it's the best possible solution. I certainly haven't seen as many as he has, and probably never will. But it is the best approach to what we can get, and the general plan is the best tool that we have to work with at this time. And if we are mixing the two of those, we just have to go forward with it. There are things that, I expressed last time, and, I'm concerned about the biology, but there are so many mitigation measures connected with this in the staff report. When I relook at them and reconsider it, it is going to force the project to work with the Fish and Game and the Fish and Wildlife Service if we adopt those mitigation measures. I think we are foolhardy to think that water isn't a crisis for everybody in the state of California. And this didn't just start. You can go look up the Owens River Valley a gazillion years ago and you'll find that out. Right now, as I started researching it so I'd have a little bit of a feel, I read that there were 6,000 wells in rural San Joaquin County. And in some of the city areas, they don't even have water meters on their water usage. And what really just kills me is that when a large housing development goes up in our neighboring county, there's like an entitlement to put a lawn right in front of it. And I've lived in 4 different homes in the mother lode, and I've never had a lawn. Up here, it's almost like a luxury, and I wonder if this is the correct battle to address a water crisis. And in fact, I have to side with the CCWD's comments that we need to lay claim to surface water here. And if this is the best alternative, then I'd say we need to go with that. Now, I know it doesn't say that Mr. Nemi or his family is going to bring the surface water out into EIR, but I guess it's sort of a roll of the dice that that's going to happen. What I do feel is it's not in his advantage to pump the strata dry. He's not going to have a very nice looking golf course if he empties all the water out of the ground. But I also think that it's in the whole scope of the things, and whether you look at 6,000 wells down the slope in San Joaquin County, or you're looking at the green lawns that you see. In fact, I took a ride in Lodi and I couldn't even find a Bermuda lawn in the front. But I could sure see a lot of long blade grass and very beautiful green catch basin parks. And they don't think about that, but we do. I think the fact is we do need to get what surface water we can to that end of the county. The groundwater is not going to last forever, and it's going to be a big
load on their shoulders to do their part in getting it out to them. And I think when they do that, it's going to make a big difference, whether that's in the EIR or not. So I guess my diatribe on that is that the water that has been identified can water the golf course. The golf course exists already. If we were not to approve it, he still has a private golf course and he could be using the same amount of water. To not recognize the fact that he's trying, that he has this and is going to be using the water, I think we would, I don't know, be throwing the baby out with the bathwater if you sort of can give me the latitude to use the old saying. And is there a water crisis that's been identified in the AR? Sure, that's for everybody. Should we stop this development? No, in fact, I think that this should probably be, and I love this term nexus coming out here. It's like I'm going to have to go home and look it up in the dictionary. We should probably use this as a pivot point to make something happen in this county to get the water out to that part of the county. And so that's one of the things I think. But I do think that when I first saw the mitigation measures, I thought, holy smoke, I've never seen anything like this. But I think the mitigation measures that have been identified are important to the CIR. This project is complex, and as Ted said, he's never seen a perfect EIR, and it's certainly the more complex it gets, the harder it would be to address everything. And there are a lot of mitigation measures in here. They deal with roads and biology, and I do think that those mitigation measures need to be respected as the best effort to correct the EIR. Thank you.
Boy, I'm only going to talk about the EIR right now. I do have a lot of other things to say. I think when the Board of Supervisors made the determination that the baseline for the EIR would be pre-golf course conditions, in effect, made an adequate EIR impossible, because I can't sit here and say that we know all the environmental effects and that we've mitigated all the environmental effects to a level that is satisfactory. We don't know all the environmental effects because of the situation of the golf course being built. I can't agree with all of the findings for the certification of the final environmental impact report. I think that the issues that have been turned over to other agencies to deal with, I think those issues should have been dealt with within the environmental impact report, particularly, I mean always, but particularly given the situation with the pre-existing golf course. My vote on the adequacy of the environmental impact report is that, I would not be able to vote for the certification of the final report.
Well, if I can count here correctly, it would appear that you're on the verge of a 2-2 vote on the final EIR. My suggestion would be you vote on that. If in fact you can't approve the final EIR, then you can't act on the project in any capacity. Correct?
So,
in other words, you can't make an affirmative action on any aspect of the project unless you agree to finalize the final EIR. So you need to take an action to decide what your vote is on the EIR. If you end up denying it, or 2-2 is not an affirmative vote, then there's no other action because you can't consider the project.
Let me ask you this, Ben Brandt, since you're giving us your guidance here on this. My honest feeling is there isn't anything that we could vote to do a resolution on that wouldn't cause an appeal. And as I asked you at the last meeting, a proponent or an opponent can appeal the decisions that we make. And if it is a 2-2 draw, which is what you're describing, then would it be better to just skip the appeal process and have us send it to the supervisors as a recommendation?
But realistically, there isn't an appeal process on this. It's going to the Board of Supervisors regardless of what you do. The issue is what are you conveying as your action?
And possibly I can clarify that a little bit more. You are not approving or denying a project. Therefore, there is nothing to appeal. You are only recommending approval or denial, and the Board of Supervisors will make the actual decision.
I understand that. I guess what I'm saying is if we have other things that we want to recommend to them, then those will never be considered.
Well, I guess there's nothing to prevent you from taking some kind of action on the environmental document and then having some discussion if you want certain thoughts conveyed. I'm just saying in terms of formality of an action, if you can't get past the environmental document and an affirmative action, it's no different than the run-of-the-mill project. You can't do the negative declaration and you can't act on the project. If you can't act positively, in other words, something other than a 2-2 or a denial, then on the final EIR, then there's no other formal action. If you wish to talk, that's fine, but there's no action.
Well, I understand that.
And can I ask one thing too? With certification of the EIR, that would, what comes along with that would be agreement with the findings for certification. So this, there's...
Yes, which you can modify before voting.
Right. Which would include this statement of overriding considerations that all of the biologic impacts and transportation hydrology impacts that could not be mitigated below significant are overridden by some other considerations. Is that correct?
Not exactly. The EIR is the informational document. The statements of overriding consideration are prepared in response to a decision to approve a project in spite of the findings of significance that are in the EIR. So they're two separate things. Certifying the EIR does not indicate that you agree with the statements of overriding consideration. It simply says that if an approval occurs and there are impacts that are considered potentially significant, then the jurisdictional agency, the lead agency, has to provide statements of overriding consideration to justify that approval. What you're approving when you certify the EIR, you are saying that it contains all of the elements that are required under CEQA. You are stating that the comments and recommendations that were received, that comments and recommendations were received, either verbatim or in summary, that there is a list of persons, organizations, and public agencies commenting on the EIR, either by bringing the copies of the comment letters or as a list. You are also indicating that the agency did respond to the significant environmental points that were raised during the review, not necessarily the individual comments, but the issues that were raised, and also in the consultation process. And so has it been completed in compliance with CEQA? Has it met all of the basic requirements that an EIR must complete? Has it been presented to you in advance of your decision? And does it reflect the lead agency's independent analysis and determination, their judgment and analysis? Those are the points that you are agreeing that this EIR is consistent with. It's not necessarily that you agree with every finding that's in it, or that you believe that every mitigation measure is completely what you would have liked to have in it. It's did it meet those basic finding requirements? And that is the certification of the EIR. You also have the options of making recommendations, just as Mr. Abbott did, to modify either mitigation measures that are associated with it. It also does not include conditions of approval. That is a separate, separate from the EIR itself.
Yeah. I was just looking at attachment A here that says draft findings for certification of the final EIR for project, blah, blah, blah. And it says finding 4 is that specific economic, legal, social, technological, or other considerations, including, and it goes on. So that would be one of the, that seems to me this kind of goes hand in hand with that certification.
I guess where I'm coming from on this, it's maybe a little different, and that is that because I disagree with things in the EIR, that doesn't make it inadequate. And because there are things I might disagree with, but that isn't having to do with the adequacy, I don't think. I mean, it's a good guiding document. That's what it's supposed to be.
That's the intent of the EIR, is an informational document.
Well,
can I interject here to my own staff? Did you intend the statements of overriding consideration to actually apply to the environmental document or to the project itself in association with acting on the project?
What you're asking?
Nothing like coming back to a job after dealing with this for 20 years, but statement of overriding consideration is normally adopted in association with a project after identifying impacts that can't be fully mitigated by conditions or other actions, but there are other overriding considerations that lead to a conclusion the project should be approved. That's when a statement of overriding consideration is traditionally used. Example being here, we act on a final EIR. It is an information tool. It is the best representation of the information and processes we identify you act on. You can take a final EIR and then deny a project. I mean, that's a very unusual step, but that's not unheard of. So I'm asking for clarifications. Aren't the statements of overriding consideration having to do with the project itself, not with the final EIR, which is what I think the question Fawn's asked.
And the answer to that is yes, so you can delete that particular finding.
You said the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. The statement of overriding considerations is required if there's project approval. The certification of the final EIR is just defining that it's in compliance with CEQA. And there are, there are a series of, at this point, it doesn't say draft, but the proposed findings to support the final EIR, that's the larger document as opposed to the document you're referring to. So those are the findings that I would request that you incorporate into the motion to certify, or to recommend approval of certifying the EIR. So you can delete that particular finding that you referenced.
So finding 4 and the evidence, there's so much paperwork here, Jan. I mean, excuse me, but I want to be clear on this. Are you deleting those from the draft findings, the certification? Is that what you're doing, deleting finding 4 and the evidence?
Let me make sure we're on the same document, because I don't think we're all on the same document.
I don't think we are either.
What document are you referring to? Attachment 4?
Attachment 4.
Okay.
At the bottom, the evidence refers to the statements of overriding consideration. So, to me, voting for the EIR is accepting the findings and evidence.
Right.
And then Brent said, well, that should be used as a consideration of the project, not the EIR.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that we break for lunch and for half an hour and make sure we're talking about the same documents. And because I also know that regardless of the action on the EIR, that that I'm sure that the commissioners do want to make some statements about the project as well. So we will take a break and reconvene as 1 o'clock, be 35 minutes, 1 o'clock.
So
Well, we've got this here. Let me bring this, the ones that I already recorded. If it gets to pushing for around 4 o'clock or so, all right, it's your game. As I said, around, I'll come back around 4. Well, maybe at least that'll be 3 hours. I'll probably have to go. Oh, another thing on this. Paul came in, he's working on doing the Murphy's Irish Station events and things. And he said he could use a volunteer sound system. I didn't know what was going on. I just said, I know someone who has some sound experience, and I said I was going to do it. I didn't get into that. That is on the rig? No, he's already in the studio. Oh, no, not that. No, what they need is someone setting up like with shotgun or setting up something, tapping into the entertainer's PA system with a wireless transmitter. I gave him an XLR to him, and so he can go into wireless transmitter. He's, yeah. I have a plan.
Sorry, otherwise I would, yeah, be more than happy.
Yeah, well, I'll come back around 4:30.
I'll be here.
Okay, everything's going okay in this department? Good, okay.
They took it all downstairs. Did they? Don't tell me you didn't bring lunch again. Didn't you learn from last time?
That's one problem.